Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell tries to take credit for cleaning up a mess that he made over decades of bad policy. But before we get to any of that, time for your daily dose of adrenaline.
You want me to stick this into my heart? Are you f***ing nuts?
President Donald Trump is having a very, very, very successful trip through the Middle East. So successful, as a matter of fact, that CNN, all these other outlets, I actually heard them being nice to him. They're trying to figure out how they can attack him, but it's win, 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 win. So this is how desperate they've gotten. This is MSNBC about his trip. Give a listen to this insanity.
Do you see any reason for Kushner to be?
That is what they do. They bring along everybody they could possibly think of to be on these trips because they want to have all the experts there. They want to have all the people there, and lots of people have a lot riding on these trips. So nobody should listen to anything MSNBC has to say ever again because clearly they don't know what the hell they are talking about. Now, there are some huge wins. As I mentioned, Boeing getting a $200 million order from Qatar is absolutely huge. And all the stuff we saw in Riyadh yesterday from Saudi Arabia, amazing. The billions of dollars that are going to go into American companies, that are going to come into American coffers, that are going to hire American workers. This is all great. But there's one little problem. As great as all these deals are, and I've read through the White House releases of these deals, I'm not seeing where the other stuff is. As great as these deals are, you're literally in Qatar today. And I read through it. There are still 4 American hostages that are being held by Hamas. Qatar is Hamas's #1 funder now that Iran is pretty much out of the picture. So Qatar is the one that tells Hamas whether or not to release the hostages. Shouldn't you say a condition of all these deals? We're selling them hundreds of millions of dollars of U.S. military equipment. Shouldn't we say a condition of that is that you're going to release the bodies of the 4 dead American hostages that are being held by Hamas? Because let's not forget, Edon Alexander, the kid from New Jersey, was returned as a goodwill gesture before the trip because Qatar told Hamas to do so. You had President Trump meeting with al-Sulani, who's the head. He's now the president, al-Jilani, who's now the head of Syria. This guy was massacring Druze in Syria a month ago. The Israeli army had to go into Syria and save the Druze population from him. He had a $10 million bounty on his head. And then Trump's shaking hands with him. Now, there is the idea of peace through business, which is, if we all want to do business together, we're not going to spend time killing each other. Free trade stops wars. There's also the idea of trust but verify. We've made deals with horrible people before. We have horrible people as allies in this world, but we're business partners. And you know what? As long as everybody understands the rules of the game, that's fine. But what are we getting in terms of foreign policy? It should be, you want to do this deal? Let's get Saudi Arabia into the Abraham Accords because these other countries will follow. Not, oh, we're going to remove sanctions and U.S. troops from Syria, even though we have this guy, al-Jilani, who is literally an al-Qaeda terrorist before he was a Syrian terrorist. This guy had a $10 million bounty on his head. So President Trump does the nice guy thing and says, well, we want Syria to be prosperous, and we want Syria to grow, and we want Syria to be better, which is all great. But realize who you're making a deal with. So I go back to the old phrase, trust but verify. Look, if this is going to make them give up their terrorist ways, I'm all for it. But something that almost nobody is looking at, that airplane, the $400 million airplane, started this discussion where now people are looking at Qatar. The Free Press, which has this article called How Qatar Bought America, and the Free Press does amazing work. Basically, what they have in here is they have Qatar spent nearly $100 billion over the past decade to gain strategic influence across the United States. This includes deep investments in politics on both sides of the aisle, education, media, think tanks, and real estate. And they have ties to terrorist organizations. They're funding terrorist organizations. So Qatar has relationships with people in the Trump administration. Pam Bondi worked for a firm, paid $115,000 a month by Qatar. Susie Wiles, Trump's chief of staff, previously led a lobbying firm representing Qatar. Kash Patel served as a consultant to Qatar without registering as a foreign agent. Steve Witkoff received $623 million hotel buyout when a real estate deal went bad from Qatar's sovereign wealth fund. Now the Trump organization is planning a golf resort in Qatar. Now, here's the thing. If this is the path to peace and prosperity, okay. You're more willing to do business with your friends. You're more willing to make deals with your friends. I get that, but let's not forget, Qatar is the largest foreign donor to U.S. universities, with billions of dollars donated to Cornell, Georgetown. They're also all over the country and all this other funding. I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't in the middle of University of Washington. They've also influenced media outlets, including CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post, and The New York Times. They've influenced think tanks like the Brookings Institute and the Richardson Center. Qatar has a long history of funding, hosting, and politically supporting terrorist groups, including Hamas, the Taliban, and Al-Qaeda. So who are we getting into business with? That's why I say trust but verify. Now, Trump is saying all the right things on this trip. He's saying everything he should be saying. And I think his speech in Riyadh was one of the best speeches he has ever given, because what he's saying is we're going in a new direction. It used to be if the U.S. and the West didn't like something, let's take it over. Let's invade it. Let's blow it to hell, and then we'll nation build afterwards. That's not what we're talking about. We don't know the customs of these places. We don't know the wars we're sticking our nose into. We don't understand it. We want everybody to get along. And we don't live in a world of sunshine and rainbows where let's just sing Kumbaya and hug. No. If we can make a deal where everybody's making money off each other, they won't want to kill each other. When the Abraham Accords were first announced, people like me went bonkers because it gave the Palestinians 95% of what they wanted, because Jared Kushner knew that the Palestinians were going to reject it, and then they could go to the Arab countries and say, they rejected it. What do you expect us to do? And then they would make peace and went after the low-hanging fruit. This is the next level of the Abraham Accords. And it worked, because do you know that right now there are more kosher restaurants in Dubai than there are in Seattle, Washington? And up until a few years ago, they hated the Jews. You have more kosher restaurants there. One of them is named Bibi. Literally, one of the kosher restaurants is named Bibi in an Arab country. So can we be real about this? Trade can stop wars. Business partnerships can bring peace, but you have to trust and verify. And the good thing about this is we're not sticking our nose in other conflicts. So what did President Trump say about all this while he was doing his tour?
My administration shares the hope of so many in this region for future of safety and dignity of the Palestinian people, but that cannot happen as long as Gaza's leaders take delight in raping, torturing, and murdering innocent people. Can't have it. I greatly appreciate the constructive role that the leaders in this room have played in trying to bring the terrible conflict to an end, including by helping secure the release of American hostage Edan Alexander. It was a big day yesterday, a very important day. I was told just before I left that they were going to be releasing Edan. We thought Edan was dead. 3 weeks ago, they said Edan was no longer living. And it was a very, very good thing. Ultimately, all hostages of all nationalities must be released as a stepping stone to peace, and I think it's going to be happening. A lot of things are happening. A lot of very positive things are happening on every front.
Now, this is how Trump operates. What does he do? He's your best friend until you give him a reason not to be. This is how he works. So let's let him do what he works and hope it's going to work out, because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't. For all we know, he said, you're going to sign this deal, and 6 months from now, you're going to announce that you're joining the Abraham Accords. And then we're going to have Saudi Arabia, Syria, Lebanon. Yeah, this could all, in theory, be happening in the next 6 months. I don't see it in the writing of these agreements, though.
In Gaza, my administration shares the hope of so many in this region for future of safety and dignity of the Palestinian people, but that cannot happen as long as Gaza's leaders take delight in raping, torturing, and murdering innocent people. Can't have it. I greatly appreciate the...
So here's the thing. He's repeating this again and again and again. He's being very, very clear about what he wants to happen. And then he specifically addresses the path to peace.
At the end of my first term, all of the momentum in this region was toward peace. I especially want to thank and congratulate the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain for their vision and courage in signing the historic Abraham Accords. It was something, it's a very big thing. I believe we would have had it filled out had the election been called fairly, which it wasn't. It was a rigged election. I hope that in the near future we can continue that progress. We have a mandate from the American people, the likes of which people haven't seen for 129 years. They say it was the most consequential election in America in 129 years. So that sounds like a long time, so we'll take that. But in the future, we'll continue that progress by adding more countries to the Abraham Accords. We have the 4, and I think they're going to be filling up very rapidly.
So that's the plan. That's the plan, and that's how you bring about peace. And that's what we all hope. I would have liked to have seen it, but, you can't get everything on the first trip. That's what I want, because you could do business with everybody, and that's a great lead-in. That's a great stepping stone. It really, really is. But at some point, you got to get what you want out of them for national security. This is not about Israel. It's about America. Why? Because when these guys attack Israel, they usually end up attacking America. Israel is the canary in the coal mine. America has to look out for America's interests. And we know that a lot of these countries have not had America's interests. In fact, they've had people chanting death to America and trying to kill Americans, and they're holding some Americans hostage right now. However, this is the road to peace. I think Senator Lindsey Graham actually put it best when he said this.
Well, first, quickly, Qatar. I trust Qatar like I trust a rest stop bathroom. If they want to be friendly, I want to be friendly back. But with those guys, trust in God, but tie up your camel.
Exactly right. You want to trust them for now? Trust them until they give you a reason not to. This is the path to prosperity. This is the path to peace. But I want to know what's on the other end. Trust, but verify. Peace through business. This is the way you can do it, as opposed to coming in and going, "We're America. We're going to impose our values on you." Look what happened with the Muslim Brotherhood. Barack Obama was so naive. He thought just because people were rebelling, that meant they wanted democracy. They didn't want democracy. They wanted terrorists in charge of them. You see all these people protesting in Gaza. They're protesting because Hamas has lost. They want a new champion. That's what they're talking about, not they want democracy. So rather than trying to redo everybody's culture, how about we take a look and leave their culture alone? For example, in the case of Riyadh. Riyadh, that place built by American contractors, built by American oil interests, built by Aramco before it was nationalized by the country itself. These are things that were built by America. You give them a Starbucks, and all of a sudden you're going to be getting along fine with these people. This is the path to peace. But trust, but verify. Let me know what you think of these deals. I think they're great for America. I think they're a great roadmap. I want to see them go even farther. I think President Trump is doing an amazing job, a job that no way Joe Biden could have done, and something that no president has done in my lifetime. Not at all. I'm just getting a little, I don't want to say selfish, greedy. Those aren't the right words. It's, if he can get all this, what else can he get out of them? So can we get the hostages back? Can we get the peace deals? Can we get some stability to that region, which has never seen stability since even biblical times? Can it finally be done through the art of the deal? Let me know if you think that can be done at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Lots more to discuss as the show continues. While things are going great in the Middle East for President Trump, things are going terribly here in Seattle for Mayor Bruce Harrell. He's trying to win an election, and he's confronted with his own record. We'll tell you what's going on when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder that coming up at 5:45, your chance to win fantabulous prizes, including a $50 Daniel's Broiler gift card and tickets to the Roy Rodeo, my friends. Yet another reason, always keep your radio tuned to 570 KVI. Left on your dial, always right on the issues. You can also stream us at KVI.com. Download the KVI app, and, of course, subscribe to us on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. Looks like a lot of you want to weigh in on Trump's trip to the Middle East. So we go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from Kevin in SeaTac. Kevin, what's going on?
Yes, sir. I agree with what you're saying 100%. I just want to emphasize a little bit on the trust and be careful part. So we've had great success trading with these countries, and you pointed out earlier how we made Saudi Arabia by building their oil infrastructure, but these countries inherently have been unstable. And remember, one time Iran was our biggest ally in the Middle East.
Yep.
And we just need to be on top of those things. We need to be supportive of the positive forces of change in these countries, and trade's a big part of it. But we need to kind of watch things too, because it can reverse on us.
Let's not forget. Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's not forget that the new MBZ, the guy who's in charge of Saudi Arabia, is more moderate than his dad was, and his dad was one of the big obstacles.
That's a very good thing. And supporting him is a good thing too.
Exactly.
And also remember, there are American citizens that are suing in federal court now for 911. Trying to pull the link with the previous leaders of Saudi Arabia and their role in 911. But I think Trump is on the right thing. The Iraqi war, for instance, that seemed really good, but that was bad from the get-go.
Well, let's not forget why we went in.
Better trading with these.
Right, we went in because Kuwait is right nearby, and they were having a problem there. So that's one of the reasons we went in the first time. And then look how that worked out for us with the Saudis. So, yeah, trust but verify. Great historical points, Kevin. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. We go back to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from Paul in Bonnie Lake. Paul, it's been too long. How you doing?
It's a great day. It is definitely a great day. I totally agree with you. Trust but verify. This is part 2 of the Abraham Accords. I am an evangelical Christian, and I think one of the reasons that President Trump has been successful is because he's recognizing the promise of Genesis 12:3, which is still in effect. But I remind you of one simple phrase: peace through strength.
Yes. Why do you think they sent out the fighter jets to escort Air Force One? Why do you think they do all the shows of force with their military, with the camels, with the cyber trucks, with showing off everything? That's them saying, look how strong we are. That's all part of the same thing, peace through strength. This is what they recognize in the Middle East. Paul, appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Switching gears back to things that are happening here at home. A 26-year-old man is being held on bail of $250,000 in the King County Jail after a judge found probable cause yesterday for charges of robbery and assault in connection with an unprovoked set of attacks near a West Seattle PCC. Yep, that's right. PCC used to be in the nice neighborhoods. Now you can't even go there without getting stabbed. Jiminson Calix Budden was arrested after police responded to a reported stabbing and robbery outside the PCC market on California Avenue Southwest on Monday. So according to police, Calix stabbed a 47-year-old man in the arm, then stole a woman's phone while grabbing her arm. Seattle police raced to the area, used a canine to track Calix to a nearby neighborhood where witnesses reported he was running through yards. He was taken to Harborview Medical Center for treatment, though police, the guy who got stabbed was taken to Harborview for medical treatment, though police said his injuries were not life-threatening. So the problem with Seattle, and people ask me this all the time from New York, they say, Ari, is it really as bad as you make it sound in your social media posts and in your show? And I say, well, here's the problem with Seattle. You never know where is going to turn into a bad neighborhood. You can have a very, very nice neighborhood, and then 5 seconds later, a homeless encampment moves in, and then you got problems. Or a city paid-for hotel gets bought out in your neighborhood, and then you got problems. You never know what's going to turn into a bad neighborhood because that's what Seattle does. And somebody who's been responsible for this literally for decades, literally since I moved to Seattle, is Bruce Harrell. He's mayor now, but let's not forget, he was on the Seattle City Council for a long time before that. So I saw this headline from Como News. Mayor Harrell unveils initiative to improve Chinatown International District. He's the one who messed it up. Now, for those of you who haven't met Bruce Harrell in person, he always talks like he's your best friend, like he's your buddy, like he's a guy you want to have a beer with, and he always talks about how much he's going to help your community. And he loves identity politics. So he'll always say, well, you know, I'm half Japanese, so of course the Chinatown International District means a lot to me. He'll always say stuff like that and then stab you in the back. He says it to the Jewish community all the time. Well, you know, I've been really good to the Jewish community. And I say, name one thing. And he can't. So the Chinatown International District was destroyed because the Seattle City Council had an idea. They had an idea to put the navigation center in the Chinatown International District. And what that is was a safe injection site. It was a glorified homeless shelter. It did all the bad things that destroyed the area. I remember when I was running for Seattle City Council in 2018. And I created a very close relationship with the people in the Chinatown International District. I went to their events all the time. They came to mine. It was great. It was a great, great, great relationship. And they were always talking about how bad the navigation center was. And they said, if we don't get a more moderate Seattle City Council that's more business friendly, that's focused on our needs, we're out of here. And I remember after all the lefty psychopaths won, a whole bunch of them were serious. So I was in Chinatown for an event after the election. And I go to this event, and I said, I'm going to stop by the store, which I know my friends own, who I met at the campaign. I haven't seen them in a while. I'm going to go say hi. And it used to be, what was it, a travel agency. That's what it was. So I go in, and I notice that the windows, all the travel agency stuff is gone, but the door's unlocked. So I walk on in, and the place has become literally an illegal casino. An illegal casino. I walk in, it's like something right out of a movie. The place has been turned into an illegal casino, and I get these strange looks when I walk in because I'm clearly not supposed to be there. And I get out of there with the quickness, and I touch base with them later, and they said, oh, yeah, we moved out of that location as soon as everything went to hell in Seattle. So Bruce Harrell is talking about an initiative to improve Chinatown International District when he's the one who brought the disaster to the area. I'm not saying Chinatown International District was always great, but he's the one who just curb stomped it and destroyed the thing. And now you want to fix it? Give me a break. You made this mess, and you got an election coming up, and the people in the Chinatown International District are not happy with you. So what you're trying to do is get back in their good graces by doing your usual shtick of, oh, I'm Japanese, I'm here for you, and I've always loved this community, and I came from this community, blah, 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 blah. Will anybody in the mainstream media call him out for the fact that he's the one who put the navigation center there? He's the one who kept pushing the homeless to that area. He's the one who took cops out of that area. Is anybody going to discuss that? Is anybody going to ask that from the lamestream media? You know the answer to that as well as I do. Speaking of the lamestream media, by the way, they are in full spin mode right now, trying to cover up for the fact that they covered up Joe Biden's decline. When we come back, the latest hypocrisy from the left-wing media about Joe Biden's decline and how all of a sudden they're caught and don't know how to get their credibility back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. A video went viral on social media today. It's 71-year-old representative from the Democrats, Debbie Dingell, asleep in Congress, literally asleep in a hearing room. And she's like sloppy asleep. Her head's back, eyes closed, all the way back like she's going to lean back too far and fall out of her chair. I'm expecting the drool to come down the side and start hearing the snoring sound soon. That's how deeply she's asleep. So while Donald Trump is making deals in the Middle East, the Democrats are asleep in Congress. It could not be a more stark contrast of what's going on. By the way, flying all over the Middle East, exhausting. I just go to Israel, and that's exhausting. I can't believe that Donald Trump is still awake. Yes, I know he has a bedroom on Air Force One, but still, when does that guy sleep? He's starting to slow down a little bit the deeper he gets into this trip, but, I mean, Representative Debbie Dingell, asleep in Congress. Donald Trump still on the move after an entire week of negotiations in the Middle East. In fact, even CNN has to start giving compliments to Donald Trump because guess what, my friends? The economy's improving.
Wallet. U.S. inflation slowing, I should say, to its lowest rate in more than 4 years. That, according to April's Consumer Price Index report. It's an unexpected and very welcome development that's defying economists' expectations amid President Trump's ongoing trade war. Let's go live right now to CNN business and politics correspondent Vanessa Yurkevich, who's watching all of this in New York. Vanessa, walk us through this morning's report. Where do things stand?
Encouraging signs, Wolf. Inflation continuing to move in the right direction, cooling on an annual basis to 2.3%.
That's huge. Huge, you might say. That's great, great news. It's actually working. That's right. Take some of that money out of the economy. The thing cools down. All of Joe Biden's reckless spending being undone. This is good news. Now, you're not going to get all the way there just by finding this waste, fraud, and abuse. You have to reform the entitlement programs. And unfortunately, I don't know if anybody's ever actually going to do that. But this is, of course, a step in the right direction. Now, a recession has many things that technically qualify to be a recession. The one thing that made the downturn, the economic slowdown, during the Biden administration not a recession was that they always said, well, job numbers are going up, and they keep going up. But remember how many times we showed that just a couple weeks after announcing each number for each month of the new jobs that were created, that the Biden administration would revise them down? They were fudging the numbers the whole time. And now we know that the Department of Labor was deliberately doing it.
The administration claims to have added almost 400,000 jobs. This is from Town Hall. From July through September of last year, but new data released this week suggests none of those jobs ever existed. In stark contrast to the monthly job reports showing an increase of 399,000 jobs during the third quarter, these numbers show a decline of 1,000 private sector jobs.
So they were fudging the numbers the entire time so that they wouldn't meet the definition of a recession. I said at the time they are fudging these numbers, and now, thanks to Fox News and Town Hall, we know that they were. Well, now the Democrats got a new bombshell on their hands. Jake Tapper has a book coming out about Joe Biden's decline in the media covering for it. So is he going to admit that he covered for it as well? Well, what's funny is when you ask the Democrats about this, because this thing is about to destroy the Democrat Party, they have a new line they've come up with for this. A new line that they're using in every single interview.
A number of different revelations coming out about President Joe Biden's decline with recent books. Is it helpful for your caucus for these to come out now? And would you want Biden to campaign for House Democrats?
We're not looking backward, we're looking forward at this particular moment in time.
Did you really not have any idea that he was not fit to serve a second term?
Casey, we're looking forward.
You're facing all of this because you lost a presidential election. And is that not Joe Biden's responsibility for deciding to run again?
We're looking forward.
That's it?
That's it.
Democrats now facing mounting questions about President Biden's decline and the alleged cover-up as new revelations continue to come to light.
So we're looking forward. That's what it is. I love that the media is finally doing their jobs a little late, but all they're doing is trying to save their own reputations. They're not looking for accountability. They're mad that the Democrats lied to them and gave them the excuses, and they're looking for a scapegoat, which is what actually happened, because let's not forget the media was complicit in the cover-up. In fact, we got a montage to show you how complicit they actually were. You need a montage. Even Rocky had a montage.
Other people who were there, and we should note that the Biden White House falsely, when people showed that clip and asked what was going on, said it was a cheap fake. They did this all the time when there was video that seemed to show Biden acting in an odd or unusual, seemingly out of it way. They would call it a cheap fake. It was not fake. It was actual video.
A lot of memes and what the White House is calling cheap fakes, which means that there are videos that are being put out on social media and then amplified on conservative media that in some cases are just not right, and in other cases are highly, highly misleading of President Biden. So it's the question that I started this conversation with, is how much to talk about it versus how much to just kind of ignore it, which is a reality. You have a 78-year-old and an 82-year-old, 81-year-old, and we have lots of examples of both of them. Yeah. Maybe Trump's aren't played as much, but both of them appearing to use your words, lose a step.
I think what the White House and Biden campaign, what they have an issue with is that these outlets are wrapping these videos in very misleading context, right? Saying that this is evidence that Biden was freezing. He's unable to walk off stage on his own. And that's obviously not the case. But that's how it's being portrayed in right-wing media. And it plays into this years-long narrative where they have tried to portray Biden as a senile old man, incapable of governing the country. And this is just the latest example.
The White House press secretary used the phrase cheap fakes, the idea of cheap fakes. Let me explain what that is to people. We've been worried for years about AI deep fakes, that computer-generated images are going to trick people into believing something that's totally false. Cheap fakes are a little bit simpler. They're cheap. They're just distorted, out-of-context videos, chopped up in certain ways, constructed in certain ways. That's what we're seeing. That's what the Biden administration, the Biden campaign is so worried about right now. But make no mistake, they are worried about this. This is a real problem. This is not some made-up fiction. The videos are oftentimes made up, but the problem is real.
They're worried about it because it was real. People like Brian Stelter, the baked potato himself, were covering for them. You know who else was covering for them? Jake Tapper. We played that montage yesterday. So Jake Tapper is writing a book about his own cover-up of what was going on with Biden. Yeah, that's what this is. Nobody should buy this thing. But you know what we should do is keep telling every single story. I will read everybody else's book, not his. I'll read people from the administration, but then I'll ask the same question. I'll say, why didn't you guys tell anybody? What, so desperate to keep your job, stay in the good graces of the Democrat Party? The Democrat Party thinks everybody involved in the Biden administration was toxic. Absolutely toxic, and doesn't want anything to do with them anymore because they feel set up by them, even though they're the ones who set them up for failure. When we come back, once again, your tax dollars here in Washington state are being spent on insanity, like a queer prom from a Lutheran college. We'll give you all the details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KBI. I've said many, many times, what you do on your own time is your own business. I do not care. Very libertarian of me. It's when you mess with our kids or you use our taxpayer money to do what you do, that's when I start caring. On Saturday, Pacific Lutheran University, a private liberal arts school in Washington, opened its campus to host a queer prom, an event targeted at youth aged 14 to 24. Okay. Can we discuss this age gap here for a minute? So you have post-college hanging out with 8th graders. 14, you're either at the end of 8th grade or you're in your freshman year. That's what age you are at 14. You know that what that means? And then you have college kids. What kind of college kids want to hang out with an 8th grader or a freshman in high school? The creepers, the groomers. 14 to 24? 14 to 24? Are you insane? The event apparently featured free HIV testing as well. It was organized by the Oasis Youth Center, a group that received substantial taxpayer funding. The so-called prom, the theme was Detective Dance, the case of the horse heist. I don't know what any of that means. What is this, one of these murder mystery things or something? It was billed as a celebration of queer joy and promoted as a safe space for youth to engage with community resources. A safe space. You're literally inviting in people who could be charged with statutory. Isn't there a lot of slow dancing at these things? Isn't there a lot of making out at these things? Isn't there a lot of post-prom action for 14 to 24-year-olds? Now, the organization, according to records Doge Washington got a hold of, we've reported on these guys before. I knew the name Oasis Youth Center sounded familiar. They get $308,342 from Washington state taxpayers through grants through the Department of Health. The funds come from programs aimed at commercial tobacco and cannabis prevention, raising questions about how public dollars are ultimately being spent. Although the Department of Health claims the specific prom was not state-funded, Oasis' continued operation and outreach are underwritten by taxpayer money. The registration form for the event asks attendees to select from 8 sexual orientations and 7 gender identities, and to include personal pronouns. This is crazy. They also promoted prizes and free HIV testing. What are your prizes if you pass your HIV test? Well, and what do you consider passing? That you have it or you don't have it? Why are you mixing 24-year-olds with 14-year-olds? This is a massive, massive problem and will lead to bigger issues. And your taxpayer money is funding this. When Bob Ferguson and the Democrats, when Bob Ferguson finally signs that budget for however many billions it's going to be in new taxes when he finally gets around to it, the question is, how much of it is waste? And something like this is waste. You want to have a queer prom? Go ahead, have a queer prom. Don't ask me to pay for the queer prom. I had to pay for my own prom. I remember my prom was not school sanctioned. We weren't allowed to have proms at our religious Jewish school. So we put together our own prom and we had to pay for the thing. Why do I need to pay for this? That's the stuff that gets me really, really upset, especially the mixing of the 14 and 24-year-olds. Do you guys not realize what you're doing? At some point, they're just going to say NAMBLA as a partner. When we come back, lots more to discuss as the show continues. Illegal criminals are using Washington sanctuary statuses as defense arguments and might actually get away with it. We'll tell you what's going on when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless. Streaming live at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, Fergie's Hate Crimes Task Force proves just how insane they actually are, and Gavin Newsom is also trying to clean up his mess, just like Bruce Harrell. But before we get to any of that, my friends, this is a crazy story that just published over at Como News from our friend Jeremy Harris. Days before a trial is expected to begin for the man charged with killing a Washington state trooper, defense attorneys have filed a motion to dismiss the case because of allegations that prosecutors violated the state's sanctuary laws by colluding with immigrations and custom enforcement the weeks after charges were filed. Can you imagine the holy hell that is going to erupt if some liberal judge grants a motion to dismiss against Raul Benitez Santana, who was the illegal immigrant who was allegedly driving at over 100 miles an hour while drunk and high when he plowed in to the parked car on the shoulder that was a speed trap of Trooper Christopher Gadd, instantly killing him. Raul Benitez Santana, a guy who is supposed to be deported for domestic violence and other charges, but then Jay Inslee signed the sanctuary state law 2 days before his verdict. He never should have been in the country. According to Como News, the defendant, Raul Benitez Santana, is accused of driving drunk and crashing into the back of a state patrol cruiser on I-5 near Marysville in March 2024. Trooper Christopher Gadd, 27 years old, left behind a wife and a 2-year-old child, don't forget, was sitting in the driver's seat of the car and died instantly. Investigators allege Benitez Santana was going over 100 miles an hour at the time of the crash. The trial was scheduled to begin tomorrow, but that has been postponed while the court considers the last-minute motion filed by the defense on Tuesday. Defense attorneys Tiffany Mecca and Emily Hancock allege a staffer in the Snohomish County Prosecuting Attorney's Office engaged in outrageous government misconduct by asking ICE officials in Seattle if they could put a detainer on Benitez Santana ahead of a court hearing last spring where he was asking for reduced bail. Hey, can somebody call me as a witness? Hang on, I am volunteering right now. Call me as a witness because I asked ICE the same thing. I am your get out of jail free. Well, no, not get out of jail. We want this guy to stay in jail. I am the linchpin here. Call me because I know a bunch of other people asked ICE about this guy. In fact, we were the ones to break the story that he was an illegal immigrant. And we asked if there would be a detainer put on him. We asked if they would be deporting him. Now, this is back when Joe Biden was president. I asked all these questions. You want to keep this guy in jail? You want this motion to dismiss to be dismissed? Be in touch with me. ARI@KVI.com. ARI@KVI.com. In fact, I'll have to figure out who the prosecutors are here. Maybe I can help him out. Benitez Santana is a citizen of Mexico, was in the U.S. illegally at the time. He was arrested for Gadd's death. ICE placed an immigration detainer on him within a week of when he was booked into the Snohomish County Jail for charges of vehicular homicide. This is absolutely insane. He was asking for reduced bail. Remember, some judge actually gave it to him. Mecca and Hancock allege the publicity of his immigration status has prejudiced the potential jury pool against Benitez Santana. It was going to come out anyway because he's an illegal immigrant criminal. His criminal record was going to be introduced anyway. They say the accusation against Mr. Benitez Santana includes the charged question of whether a Latino man who has been maligned by the media, the public, and elected officials as an undocumented Mexican criminal unlawfully caused the death of a police officer. The defense motion states, no. This isn't some case where he's a Maryland man or a Marysville man. Oh, wait, his defense attorneys seem to be trying to make it into that. Oh, he's a poor victim. He was maligned by the media, and Ari Hoffman especially, because he's a criminal with a criminal record who never should have been here anyway and wouldn't have been here if not for Jay Inslee and Bob Ferguson. They claim the state reasonably should have known that including information about the client's immigration status in a publicly filed court document would result in its dissemination to the public and could materially prejudice the adjudicative process. Mike, can you do me a favor? Mike, can you do me a favor? Can you do me a favor? Get me the information for the Snohomish County prosecutors. I know I'm workshopping this on the air. I've had enough of this. It is not what they did that prejudiced the jury or anybody else. It's what I did. It's what Ari Hoffman did. Because I'm the one who looked up the jail records. I'm the one who said this guy's an illegal immigrant. I'm the one who reached out to ICE. It wasn't the Snohomish County prosecutors. It was me. You want to blame them for this? This is insane. If I had time to read this article in its entirety before I went on air today, I would have contacted them before the show. Washington sanctuary laws restrict how and when police, prosecutors, and jails can cooperate with federal immigration authorities. Defense attorneys allege communication between the prosecutor's office and ICE violated the Keep Washington Working Act and the Court Open to All Act. Their case is bogus. It was me. I am taking full credit for it. I am Spartacus. Somebody please tell the Snohomish County prosecutors to be in touch with me before I do. Emails cited in the defense memo show a legal assistant at the Snohomish County Prosecuting Attorney's Office contacted ICE on March 6 and asked about the possibility of putting a federal hold on him in anticipation of a proposed bail reduction. Benitez Santana was initially held on a bail of $1 million for the charge of vehicular homicide. We believe defense is going to schedule a motion to reduce the bail in the next couple of weeks. We would love to be wrong about this, but we need to prepare just in case. When I spoke to our jail, they indicated it is unlikely that any bond company is going to be willing to post $1 million, so I do think we are currently safe. However, defense may decide to file a motion to reduce bail, and we may get a judge who is known for making unbelievable rulings hear the motion and decide to reduce bail. By the way, that's exactly what happened. The defense alleges this communication happened within 4 days of Benitez Santana's arrest. I did it day one. I did it the first day, the very first day. This is it. I'm contacting the Snohomish County Prosecutor's Office. They say that this legal assistant not only communicated with ICE, she sent ICE notification that defense was expected to file a bail motion. Okay, I didn't do that. Less than an hour after Mr. Benitez Santana filed his motion, legal assistant provided ICE with a copy of a defense brief. Less than an hour later, Mr. Benitez Santana was informed ICE would be present at his bail hearing to arrest him. Yeah, I think that's a coincidence. They knew about this days before that. Literally days before this. But then, don't forget, on May 15th, a judge reduced bail for Benitez Santana from $1 million to $100,000, which means he could have been out of jail for $10,000. He's been in custody since the time of his arrest because he knows if he gets bailed out, ICE is going to get him and deport him. Although Mr. Benitez Santana's family strongly and thoughtfully considered posting his bail, they ultimately decided they could not because of fear that ICE would detain and deport him and possibly themselves as well, whether or not they are lawfully in this country. What? Give me a break. What they are trying to do is get national sympathy for this guy from the Democrats. I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden you're going to hear Nick Brown start making statements and Bob Ferguson start making statements and all the other Democrats in Washington start defending this guy who allegedly killed a cop. The KWW, this act prohibits law enforcement state agencies from collecting or sharing immigration information unless there's a connection between that information and investigation into a violation of state or local criminal law. Well, what do you think this is? Or if required to by a court order or other legal requirements. The extrajudicial conversations between the state and ICE serve no legitimate law enforcement purposes, Mecca and Hancock wrote. Beyond the ethical violations, the collusion between the state of Washington with the federal immigration agents is deeply disturbing. The state's communication with ICE, it's not the state, it's Snohomish County, with ICE instigated the very type of violations they sought to avoid. He's not some guy who came here to pick crops. He's a criminal who killed a cop. They tried to get his blood evidence dismissed. They tried to get that excluded from trial. They claimed he was not read his Miranda rights after the arrest. These guys have tried everything. And let's not forget, they got the body camera video, which was played at the hearing on evidence issues in April, showed Benitez Santana made conflicting statements about what happened in the crash. He initially claimed, he had nothing to do with it. Somebody hit him. Somebody else cut him off, and he swerved out of the way. There was dash camera footage of that. What was it, the third day, the fourth day this whole thing happened? On April 17th, Judge Karen Moore ruled that the post-arrest statements and blood evidence could be admitted to the trial. Mecca and Hancock, the defense attorneys, say statements made by Republican politicians in Washington and commentators on social media have prejudiced the potential jury pool. Man, I got to read this whole thing and see if I'm actually listed in here. The media has used inflammatory and racist language. No, he's an illegal immigrant criminal. I didn't discuss what nationality he is, except for stating where he actually came from. I'm not making derogatory comments about that. Elected officials have used this for political gain, regardless of the harm it would do to constitutional protections. And the public has weighed in, judging not only Mr. Benitez Santana, but an entire group of people who they deem unworthy of due process. No, multiple courts said he was guilty of the offenses he committed before he allegedly killed a Washington state trooper. The defense included examples of what it called racist and disparaging social media comments that call, the guy who allegedly killed a cop is sad about what they said about him online. Boo frickin' who. I don't feel bad for you at all. They quote Representative Dan Griffey, who commented on the case after it was revealed Benitez Santana was in the country illegal. We should not be importing hardened criminals and giving safe haven to those people. What's wrong with that? Oh, you said those people. I see what it is. What do you mean, you people? A hearing has been ordered with Judge Karen Moore in Snohomish County Superior Court for Monday morning to address the defense's motion to dismiss the case. If the motion is denied, a jury trial is scheduled to start the following day. Prosecutors are expected to file a motion responding to the defense's allegations before Monday's hearing. So this is the new insanity. They're trying to get this guy off by claiming we violated the sanctuary state status, which, by the way, I don't think that's gone to the Supreme Court yet. I got to go back and double check. But you're claiming that this thing they passed in violation of federal law, so this violation of the law should keep the guy out of jail for killing a cop? Man, what a crazy, crazy leap of logic this is. And it's all going to come down to the judge. Meanwhile, speaking of crazy things happening in immigration in our neck of the woods. So, on Monday, Washington State Governor Bob Ferguson signed a new bill into law that grants the state sweeping authority to conduct oversight at all privately owned ICE detention centers in Washington. Oh, privately owned, right. Because you're thinking to yourselves, we don't want to have a problem like what just happened down in New Jersey. We want to go in any time we want to say we're saving the illegal immigrants. By the way, Kristi Noem was testifying on Capitol Hill today about what actually happened in New Jersey.
But first, I would be remiss if I did not address the disturbing actions that we saw last week. There were members of this very committee that took part in an action at Delaney Hall on May 9th that need to be addressed. I served as a member of Congress in this body for 8 years, and I understand the importance of congressional oversight. What happened on May 9th was not oversight. It was a political stunt that put the safety of our law enforcement officers, our agents, our staff, and our detainees at risk. Here are the facts. As a vehicle approached the security gate at Delaney Hall Detention Center, a mob of protesters, including 3 members of Congress, stormed the gate and they trespassed into the detention facility. We have footage of those members of Congress slamming their bodies into our law enforcement officers, shoving them, screaming profanities in their faces, striking them with their fists, and otherwise assaulting law enforcement. The behavior was lawlessness, and it was beneath this body. Members of Congress should not break into detention centers or federal facilities. Had these members requested a tour, we certainly would have facilitated a tour. As a body knows, there are proper protocols and there are procedures that must be abided by.
That's an important point. If they had asked for a tour, we would have taken them through. I remind you of the various Republicans that asked for tours of Obama's kids in cages and took pictures of it and of the immigration crisis. It wasn't until these pictures started going viral on social media, they said, no more tours, we're not showing you anything. They didn't even ask. They showed up for the stunt, and it sure sounds like an insurrection to me.
These congressional members and staff visit our facilities all of the time, and these members could follow the policies that have been in place, and they would have been followed. We would have facilitated a tour of this important facility. However, even after these members assaulted our federal law enforcement officers, we still provided them with a tour of that facility. I'm glad that at their press conference following the tour, these members acknowledged that Delaney Hall is in good condition and meets deferral standards. Charges made by these politicians that Delaney does not have the proper permitting is false. We have valid permits and inspections for plumbing and electricity and fire codes that have been cleared. Lastly, I'd like to remind Americans and everyone in this body who is detained in this detention facility are murderers, rapists, known terrorists, MS-13 gang members, drug traffickers, and other heinous actors. I hope that those members of Congress will so passionately protest on behalf of the American victims that they were elected to represent, and not just violent criminals who are in this country illegally.
Boom. Now, Congressman Dan Goldman seemed to be really advocating for those criminals, and Kristi Noem called him out for it.
Mr. Abrego-Garcia, pursuant to this court order.
It's got to be extremely discouraging to be one of your constituents. To see you fight for a terrorist like this and not fight for them is extremely alarming to me.
I'm fighting for due process, and that's under the Constitution.
Gentleman's
and you
time
should
has
fight
expired.
due process.
The gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize Ms. Green for 5 minutes questioning.
Dan Goldman is truly the most useless member of Congress. He really, really is. But you know who's more useless than a member of Congress? A Democrat who is a terrible, terrible transportation secretary who thinks they're going to be the next president. And, of course, I'm talking about Mayor Pete himself. That's right. Pete Buttigieg is back advocating for illegal immigrant criminals. But Pete looks a little different than he normally does. You know the joke we used to make about Mayor Pete? We used to say that Mayor Pete looked like he was always wearing his dad's suit and looked like a little kid. Well, clearly somebody told him if he wants to be president of the United States, he can't look like he's 12 anymore wearing his father's old suit. So on this campaign trail he's on, he grew a beard. Oh, congratulations, Mayor Pete, on finally hitting puberty. We're very proud of you. But also, he's not wearing a suit anymore, trying to look more rugged. If your definition of a rugged man is Pete Buttigieg or Tim Walz or any of these other clowns, you got bigger problems. But Mayor Pete is out there on the campaign trail after being a total disaster as transportation secretary, where he's not the guy who's fixing the FAA problems. In fact, he created more FAA problems. Let's not forget him blowing up that train, which derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, contaminating everything around there. Let's not forget that when he was mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Domino's Pizza had to get the potholes fixed because he couldn't even fix the potholes in the road. And this guy wants to be president, but he's thinking to himself, you know what? I got a chance. Who else are they going to turn to? Gavin Newsom? Tampon Tim? No, they're going to turn to me. And then he goes advocating for illegal immigrant criminals.
The whole point is that no one person, least of all, no one politician, gets to decide that you're a criminal. Who decides? We have a process. We have laws. That's what due process is.
Pete, Bubby, he got found to be a criminal, illegal immigrant twice by 2 different courts. That's called due process. If you guys are trying to make the due process argument, you're making it badly. This guy was found to be an illegal immigrant not once, but twice. In fact, 3 times, if you count the most recent one. So, really, Mayor Pete, the facial hair is not going to make you seem smarter. You can stroke the beard and go, I'm thinking, but it's not going to make you look tougher. It's not going to make you look smarter. You just look more like an idiot, which everybody knows you actually are, and should never be put in charge of a lemonade stand, let alone the Department of Transportation or the United States government. You couldn't even handle South Bend, Indiana. When Domino's Pizza has to fix the potholes in your town, you know you messed up. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from Leonard in Shoreline. Leonard, what's going on?
Hey,
Regarding Mr. Benito Sanchez, I'm glad you mentioned it because I can tell you right now that his bail has been released to down to $100,000, if his family posts $10,000 and gets him out, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but just like those police scanners that were encrypted a week ago yesterday, there will be no accountability and no transparency because he's going to end up being deported, and the Democrats will be left.
Well, here's the thing. That's exactly, they said that's why they haven't bailed him out. What they're worried about is that ICE is going to pick him up when he gets bailed out, so they decided not to bail him out. Leonard, appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends, including how Governor Gavin Newsom is trying to clean up his mess, just like Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell. Why? Because Gavin Newsom also wants to run for president. We'll give you all details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. California Governor Gavin Newsom has his eye on the prize, and it's the White House. That's right. He's trying to now scale back health insurance for illegal immigrants in the state and clear out homeless encampments statewide. How long has he been governor for? What is this, his second term, third term? I can't even keep it. I think it's second. I think it's his second term, right? So homelessness explodes on his watch. He's the one who championed giving the illegal immigrants the health insurance, even though the state couldn't afford it and was facing a massive, massive budget gap, even bigger than Washington's. According to the New York Times, Newsom is set to call for freezing Medi-Cal enrollments for illegal immigrant adults in a Wednesday budget presentation, which would take place as soon as January. He is also reportedly seeking to charge those who remain with the state version of Medicaid $100 per month starting in 2027. There's two reasons he's doing this. One, the California budget gap is even bigger than anybody expected it to be, bigger than the estimates had it. And as a result, they have big financial problems. Can you imagine if a state that had a $100 billion surplus like California did goes to having a $100 billion budget deficit? Oh, wait a minute. That's just like what happened here in Washington. Just the numbers are a little bit smaller. That's okay. Give the Democrats time. They'll do it eventually. Newsom has estimated that these moves would save approximately $5.4 billion. I don't think that's going to do it. I just don't think that's going to close that $100 billion budget. I don't think that's going to do it. Newsom has partially blamed the budget woes on the $16 billion drop in tax revenue from the trade turbulence. Do you think maybe it's because all these companies moved out of California? Do you think maybe it's because all these rich people moved out of California? We've shown the map a bunch of times over on social media. Ari Hoffman Official on Facebook and Instagram. The Hofffather over on X. The map of all those little dots that look like ants, where they left the California flight. Where did 1 million people from California go? You know where they went? Here. Washington State. They came here. So you had a whole bunch of them bringing their voting habits here, which has made things so bad. They went to other states like Texas and Florida. They got out of California, and they took their tax revenue with them. Whether they're private individuals, whether they're businesses, they all left taking all that money with them. And you're trying to blame it on trade? He's calling it the Trump slump. What? Who was president the last 4 years, Gavin? That wasn't Trump. That was you. The outlet noted that Medi-Cal has been spending billions more than expected by California leaders when they made the program available to all low-income residents last year, regardless of immigration status. Oh, really? You mean all the illegal immigrants hopped on the program you said was for illegal immigrants, and you're surprised by how many illegal immigrants are actually in the state, and now you can't afford it? Oh, whop, whop. Yeah, that's your fault, guys. Newsom said in a news release, there's nothing compassionate about letting people die on the streets. Why'd you let them die on the streets the last 8 years, Gavin? You've been letting them do that for a while. In fact, even before then, you were mayor of San Francisco and torpedoed San Francisco. So you didn't have a problem with it back then. The ordinance is backed in part by $3.3 billion in Proposition 1 funding. His office said that the model ordinance draws from the state's proven and workable approach, which between July 2021 and May 2025 cleaned up over 1,600 encampments and over 311,873 cubic yards of waste from sites that lie along the state right-of-way. Stop. This is a false number. It's the same false number that Washington uses. It's the same false number that New York uses. It's the same false number that Seattle uses. It's the same false number that everybody else uses. Want me to illustrate how? Here we go. When you clean up a homeless encampment in Seattle, what happens? Immediately, they set up shop a block away, 2 blocks away, 3 blocks away. Then you clean them up. How many times have you cleaned up the same encampment, the same people, just in a different location? So claiming that you cleaned up 16,000 encampments, we don't know how many times you cleaned up the exact same people. It could be a quarter of that. It could be an eighth of that. It could be 100th of that. We don't know how many people there actually were. They just move from place to place to place. And he's bragging about this? No, sir. No, sir, not at all. But he's doing exactly what we're seeing around here. Bruce Harrell saying that he's going to clean up the Chinatown International District now. You've been in office for 3 years. You could have done this 3 years ago. Why now? Oh, right. You're running for re-election. So disingenuous. When we come back, speaking of disingenuous, Bob Ferguson's Hate Crimes Task Force had another meeting, and it was a doozy. We'll have that insane audio for you when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, coming up at 5:45, your chance to win fantabulous prizes, including a $50 Daniel's Broiler gift card and 2 tickets to the Roy Pioneer Rodeo, which I am very, very excited for because I've never been to before, and KVI is going to be there this year. Yet another reason, always keep your radio tuned. 570 KVI, left on your dial, always right on the issues. You can also stream us at KVI.com, download the KVI app, and, of course, subscribe to us on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. You know, there's so much material coming out that sometimes we don't get to post all of it. And sometimes I forget about certain things. So Friday, Bob Ferguson's Hate Crimes Task Force met again. And I was looking forward to this because it was 4 days after what happened at the University of Washington, where anti-Semitic Hamasniks and Antifa lunatics caused over $1 million of damage to the EIB building, the engineering building that was paid for by T-Mobile and Boeing and all these other companies, caused over $1 million in damage to that building. So I was looking forward to the Hate Crimes Task Force because they've never brought up the left-wing violence before. For them, it's all January 6th, white supremacists, MAGA, all that. And I'm thinking to myself, they can't ignore this, can they? Well, they couldn't really ignore it, but they did pivot away from it. I'm so mad at myself. I was sitting on this footage, completely forgot I had it, and then Brandy DMs me today, and she goes, "Did you see this? Did you watch this?" And I'm like, oh, crud, completely forgot to post it online. Listen to the conversation, and listen to how one person brings up what was happening with the left-wing violence. And then what happens is the person, the expert they have, pivots away from it immediately. It's a little long, but worth the listen.
I'm thinking about how the public is seeing what's happening on college campuses and seeing it more as like, well, it's free speech, versus a lot of the Jewish people will see kind of like take it and it's like, okay, someone is protecting us. And I'm speaking as a biased Jewish person, by the way, mom and Israeli. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, even when I do those programs, when I go to college campuses, I try to educate people and I try to bridge divide between even staff members, because I think that's where it starts with administration and staff, creating a dialogue where people are more educated and aware to the nuances and how what we're seeing right now is not just harming Jewish people, but it's really, there is a risk for radicalization. I wonder if you have any suggestions how not to preach the choir, but actually bridging divide and getting the word out there and showing people the risk that you're seeing and you're mentioning of the results of any type of binary type of thinking, us versus them, and how do we go there? What do we do?
Thank you. It's a great question, and Cynthia might be able to also comment on this. Given the extensive work that Peril has done over the years before my arrival here on the intersection of anti-Semitism and other forms of hate and violence, because you're absolutely correct. Ideologies or sort of narratives like the Great Replacement theory, which are anti-Semitic theories, which result in the most lethal attack on the black community in the United States.
Whoa, 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 whoa. You jumped right to the white supremacist stuff. She wasn't asking about that. You jumped right to the black community. She wasn't asking about that. You pivoted right on over like it was rehearsed. Couldn't have been that well rehearsed with the It's the, oh, crud, where's that? Papers, where is it? Oh, yes, well, here we go. Okay, let's hear the rest of this BS answer.
In Buffalo, New York, which result in the most lethal attack on Latino Americans in...
Buffalo, New York. She didn't ask about Latinos. She didn't ask about Buffalo, New York. She asked about what is happening on college campuses.
Walmart in El Paso, Texas.
Walmart in El Paso, Texas. We're not talking about El Paso, Texas. We're talking about college campuses.
Is it anti-Semitic conspiracy theory generating violence against black and Latinos?
Whoa! Wait a second. An anti-Semitic conspiracy theory generating hate against... What planet do you live on?
As well as the most lethal attack on the Jewish population at the Tree of Life synagogue. So,
okay, Tree of Life synagogue, terrible, horrible, awful. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about what happened on college campuses, where 4 days before your stupid meeting, you had anti-Semitic, violent Hamasniks and Antifa activists destroy $1 million worth of equipment and property at the University of Washington. And you're talking about the Tree of Life Synagogue? Hey, booby, how about October 7th? Look what I just did. There you go. Let's do that. No, let's talk about the Holocaust. Let's just bring that stuff. We're talking about college campuses.
In Pittsburgh. So anti-Semitism is closely mapped. Extremism is intersectional, and anti-Semitism is a conduit to other forms of hate.
Oh, it's a conduit. Right. We're just going to ignore the anti-Semitism. It's a conduit for other forms of hate. Last time I checked, bub, Antifa was on the side of BLM. Last time I checked, they're the ones who are protesting the ICE facilities and attacking the ICE facilities. Can you explain to me more about how this is a conduit for other things? I'm confused.
And violence. And so educating communities about those intersections, I think, is quite important.
I don't even know what the hell he just said. I don't know. The intersections? Is this driver's ed all of a sudden? What is he talking about? They will never actually deal with extremism. So you know what I did? I sent an email after I first saw this to the ADL locally. The ADL does not have a good track record of getting back to me promptly. But the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, their whole mission statement is to fight against anti-Semitism, and they're part of this task force. So do you know what I asked them? First, I asked them why they were part of this in the beginning. And they said, well, we have to stop the right-wing extremism. What about the left wing? Do we have a problem with right-wing extremism here in Washington? When's the last time you saw a neo-Nazi in Seattle, Washington? Oh, wait, we call them Hamasniks. Yeah, we don't have a problem with right-wing extremism. We have a problem with left-wing extremism around here. And nobody wants to talk about it in government. Bob Ferguson didn't even want to give a statement about it. Bruce Harrell has been silent about it. Nick Brown gave a garbage statement about it. They don't even want to talk about it at all. This whole hate crimes task force is a farce and should be shut down right now because it is clear this is designed to target conservatives, to target Republicans, because there's no right wing here. There's no far right here. So what is this for? Somebody to call up their little hotline and go, Ari Hoffman said something mean about Kamala Harris, and I'm triggered by it. It's a hate crime. It's a hate crime. Send the police. Arrest Ari Hoffman. Wait, didn't Lisa Herbold try that already with that RV? Oh, wait. She actually did. Arrest Ari Hoffman. He towed that RV to my house. He did it. It's him.
See, it turns out it was just a little bit of confusion of phrasing because here at Talk Radio 570 KVI and on the Ari Hoffman show, we hate crime.
Yes.
See, we hate crime.
Oh, I'm with you now. I see.
I don't like it.
Oh, I got it.
It's bad.
That's what we're going to do with it now. By the way, you guys have no idea what you're doing because when you let this number be known, I am going to put it on air every single day. And every single day, do you know what we're going to do? We're going to call that hotline. And we're going to tell that person who answers that they're on air with us. And we're going to air our grievances. Mike's like, oh, God, he's going to make me do this every day, isn't he? We are going to air the grievances. Every single hate crime we can possibly find that was done by the left, I'm going to start back when I first got involved in politics because some of these things have really long statute of limitations. We're going to do every single one, every single day. Who's your most frequent caller? Ari Hoffman from Talk Radio 570. That's what it's going to be. We're going to call every single day. I bet you by the end, if they actually have real people on the other end of this, it's going to be like, hi, Evelyn. It's Ari Hoffman from Talk. Ari, what do you want? That's what it's going to be by the end of this. Evelyn, are you okay being recorded? No. Okay, we're going to do it anyway because I don't need your consent in this state to put your voice on the radio. Wait, I actually think I do. Yes, we actually do. We will follow the law, unlike Bob Ferguson, Nick Brown, and Bruce Harrell. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. Jay Inslee's failures are continuing to be documented long past the time he's out of office, and they all relate to his pet project climate change. We'll tell you all about it when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Have you noticed that every single time, these climate change activists say that the world's going to end, it's always like 5 to 10 years from that date? I found a clip from the 1980s, where the news anchor was, I think it was Dan Rather or something, was saying, well, climate experts now say that the world climate change could be, whatever they called it back then, global warming. That's what it was. It was the beginning of global warming. That's what the 90s were, the hole in the ozone layer. That's always 5 years, 10 years, and they've never been right. They just keep bumping the estimates. Isn't that an inconvenient truth for you? Oh, yes, thank you very much. Do appreciate it. Yes, it's not yet. It's cold outside. It's supposed to be spring. It was raining this morning. Yeah, I know where we live. I know. I just got used to the nice weather. Maybe
I'm just saying I could use some of that global warming here. Am I right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Very, very good. Yes. So, what's going on now? There's some good news out of Idaho, where they have successfully detached themselves from these California climate emission standards, these carbon emission standards that they have. So this is from Mountain States Policy Center. Idaho is among 17 states that successfully sought a repeal of California's harmful electric truck mandates. Called the Advanced Clean Fleet, the original rule from the California Air Resources Board would have placed onerous burdens on trucking companies to phase out internal combustion engines in favor of electric vehicles, introducing higher costs and uncertainty into the supply chain. Mike, have you ever seen a truck that's electric? I don't mean the Cybertruck. I mean the Mack trucks. I mean the big 18-wheelers. You ever seen one of those that wasn't in the X-Men movie?
Oh, you beat me too. I was going to say I saw him in that Logan movie, but that's probably about it. No, I've never seen those.
Now, I've seen that Tesla wants to make them. I've seen they've tested them, but I've never actually seen these suckers anywhere. And I got to tell you something. I have had my eyes opened a little bit to the EV world, thanks to our friends over at Renton Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, who, as you may have been hearing in the commercials, they hooked me up with the Jeep Wagoneer SEV that I've been driving around. Those of you that follow me on social media, you can see my adventures with the EV. Well, here's the thing right now. I had to charge it for the first time last night. So I have to charge this thing, and what I realized about it is that it's a great commuter vehicle right now. It's great for people who live in cities right now. The charging, if you get the charging station in your house, that'll be good too. But the thing is that if I want to get an electric vehicle, or I want to drive my Dodge Charger, which is a gas guzzler, either way, I should be able to have that choice. Mandating you get rid of these things because of pie-in-the-sky idealism doesn't work practically, is very harmful economically. Because, as we saw yesterday in the story we did with the Washington State ferries, the new ferries that Bob Ferguson said he wasn't gonna buy, but is now putting out bid requests for, are the ones that are triple the price of the originals. So can we be smart about this? We don't have the trucks yet. Lots more to discuss as the show continues. When we come back, Ben & Jerry's just got thrown out of a congressional hearing? Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up at 5:45, your chance to win fantabulous prizes, including a $50 gift card, plus so much more. But before we get to any of that, got some breaking news for you right now.
Talk Radio 570 KVI. Breaking news on the Ari Hoffman Show.
I wasn't planning on discussing the RFK Jr. hearings until tomorrow because I want to watch them in their entirety, but something just came across my news feed that I just started laughing at. So one of the Ben & Jerry's founders, Ben Cohen, was just tossed from a congressional hearing with RFK Jr. and arrested for protesting. So let me make sure I got this right. The guy who sells ice cream that has a 400 calorie count per 2/3 of a cup of your chunky monkey is mad at the guy who's trying to make our food healthy. Oh, that's what he's actually mad about. I see. It's Big Ice Cream. Big Ice Cream is mad right now at RFK Jr. because he's coming for their food. Yeah, Mike actually ran me a calorie count. Chocolate fudge brownie, 250 calories per half a cup. New York super fudge chunk, 380 calories per half a cup. Vanilla, oh God, this is the problem right here. 330 calories per half a cup. Now, their vanilla is garbage, by the way. Mike knows me. I have very, shall we just call them, simple food taste. I'm a simple guy. I like my vanilla ice cream. Ben & Jerry's is one of the worst vanilla ice creams I have ever had. I am a vanilla ice cream connoisseur, you might say. You may say, Ari, what's the best one? Haagen-Dazs French vanilla, without a doubt. Without a doubt. That's in this country. I'm giving you the domestic products. So the French vanilla by Haagen-Dazs. Oh, my God, a French vanilla milkshake from a Haagen-Dazs store. Oh, my God, best thing I've ever had in my life. Second best, Carvel. Carvel is not a chain that's out here. That's an East Coast chain. There's some in the Midwest. Carvel, second best. And then we go down the chain. But also, Ben & Jerry's, they get frostbite more than any other ice cream almost immediately. I hate Ben & Jerry's. Why'd this guy get arrested? He's a far-left Looney Tune activist. Always has been. This is nothing new. In fact, this is the guy who, remember they were boycotting selling this stuff? And they couldn't answer why they were boycotting Israel. Do you remember this clip? Mike, I think this must be like 4 or 5 years old already at this point.
If you disagree with the Israeli government policy, why not just stop sales completely?
Well, I disagree with the U.S. policy. We couldn't stop selling in the U.S. I think it's fine to be involved with a country, to be a citizen of a country, and to protest some of the country's actions. And that's essentially what we're doing in terms of Israel. We hugely support Israel's right to exist, but we are against a particular policy.
You guys are big proponents of voting rights. Why do you still sell ice cream in Georgia? Texas, abortion bans. Why are you still selling there?
I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting question. I don't know what that would accomplish. We're working on those issues of voting rights and I don't know. I think you ask a really good question, and I think I'd have to sit down and think about it for a bit.
This is the dum-dum who got arrested today for protesting RFK Jr. Did you stop RFK Jr.? Did you stop him? Did you make any difference whatsoever? No, now everybody just goes, oh, the lunatic. In fact, I bet anybody who knows that other clip exists is playing that other clip today while discussing what a lunatic you are. Have you solved the problem in the Middle East? Because that interview was 4 years ago. Yeah, things have just been hunky-dory in the Middle East, right? Right? Everything's been fine out there. You know who's actually solving things in the Middle East? Donald Trump. Donald Trump is out there right now. He's continuing his Middle East trip. He was in Qatar today, And here's what he said.
At the end of my first term, all of the momentum in this region was toward peace. I especially want to thank and congratulate the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain for their vision and courage in signing the historic Abraham Accords. It was something, it's a very big thing. I believe we would have had it filled out had the election been called fairly, which it wasn't. It was a rigged election. I hope that in the near future we can continue that progress. We have a mandate from the American people, the likes of which people haven't seen for 129 years. They say it was the most consequential election in America in 129 years. So that sounds like a long time, so we'll take that. But in the future, we'll continue that progress by adding more countries to the Abraham Accords. We have 4, and I think they're going to be filling up very rapidly.
Yeah, lousy ice cream man isn't bringing about world peace. He just now is out a few bucks in bail money, if they even charge bail in Washington, D.C. anymore. So, yeah, Ben Cohen, you have accomplished absolutely nothing. You just look like a fool and prove once again why people like me will never buy your garbage frostbitten ice cream. Donald Trump's trip is not without the things that people have had criticism about, though. Don't get me wrong. I like 99% of the stuff I'm seeing right now, but what I want to see is 100%. And I know that's sometimes an unfair standard for the president of the United States, but he's negotiating all these amazing deals, getting all these contracts for Boeing and other American companies. It's great. It's huge. But there are still 4 American hostages. We still have 4 American hostages being held by Hamas. And Qatar controls Hamas. They're their number 1 funder. So the question is, what are we going to do about this? This is a very, very real question. So President Trump was addressing the conflict in the Middle East and what we're going to do to solve it.
My administration shares the hope of so many in this region for future of safety and dignity of the Palestinian people, but that cannot happen as long as Gaza's leaders take delight in raping, torturing, and murdering innocent people. Can't have it. I greatly appreciate the constructive role that the leaders in this room have played in trying to bring the terrible conflict to an end, including by helping secure the release of American hostage Edan Alexander. It was a big day yesterday, a very important day. I was told just before I left that they were going to be releasing Edan. We thought Edan was dead 3 weeks ago. They said Edan was no longer living. And it was a very, very good thing. Ultimately, all hostages of all nationalities must be released as a stepping stone to peace, and I think it's going to be happening. A lot of things are happening. A lot of very positive things are happening on every front.
So, we know that it's peace through prosperity, peace through business, peace through strength. That's the Trump doctrine. Why are they giving him the red carpet, velvet rope treatment and all the showing off to say, look how strong we are. Don't you want to do business with us? And Donald Trump is the perfect guy to be negotiating all these deals right now. They want our military tech? Give us back the hostages. You want us to sell you all this stuff? Give us back the hostages. They are American hostages that we need to get back. But what's fascinating about this, what's truly fascinating, is what Donald Trump is doing. Let's take you and me for a minute. So, me, I won an Aston Martin one day. Who wouldn't want an Aston Martin? So you show me an Aston Martin and you say, hey, you can have an Aston Martin. That's pretty tempting to me if you do this, that, and the other thing. That's what Donald Trump is doing. The problem is some people don't think like that. Some people think, I just want to kill, rape, pillage, and steal, like Hamas. That's literally what their whole life is about. And then you've got countries like Lebanon and Syria. So Lebanon, Hezbollah controls the country. But Hezbollah has been destroyed by Israel, especially after Operation Grim Reaper. So are they going to choose to continue to be terrorists? Or are they going to say, you know what? There could be a better life. The U.S. isn't trying to change the government of these countries like Saudi Arabia, the sheiks, or any of that stuff. They're saying, we just want to do business with you. We want to have peace with you. We don't want anybody attacking anybody else. That's the doctrine. So Donald Trump said this about Lebanon.
My administration stands ready to help Lebanon create a future of economic development and peace with its neighbors.
You're saying, have you had enough war? Could we really be about to bring Lebanon into the Abraham Accords? That was a lost cause. That was a failed state. He's meeting with al-Jawlani. Al-Jawlani is the president of Syria, who was a member of Al-Qaeda, who a month ago, him and his troops in Syria, after they overthrew the Assad regime, were massacring Druze in Syria, so much so that Israel had to send the IDF into Syria to save the Druze population. This guy has a $10 million bounty on his head from the U.S. government. And Donald Trump shaking hands with him? Because he's saying your country is at a crossroads. We've made deals with horrible people in the past, but your country is at a crossroads. Do you want to choose prosperity or do you want to choose war? Now, it's an interesting gambit rolling back everything on Syria and saying, how's this going to be? You going to stop fighting with Israel? You going to stop fighting with all your neighbors? What about the Houthis? The Houthis may have a ceasefire with the U.S., but right after that ceasefire, what'd they do? They started launching missiles at Israel over Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia doesn't want that. They don't want their ballistic missiles coming over them, so they want this American tech to also help shoot down the missiles. Because if one of those suckers misfire, which they do all the time, it could land on Saudi Arabia, and they don't want that. But of course, what's the head of the snake is Iran. Everybody in the Middle East is worried about a rogue terrorist state with a nuclear weapon, and nobody wants that to happen. So Donald Trump is saying, hey, if you guys want to choose the peace and prosperity you had under the Shah in the 1970s, we can do that. We can have peace and prosperity. But if you guys keep being a bunch of terrorists, it's not going to end well for you. The entire Middle East, one of the core principles behind the Abraham Accords is that Israel isn't the big baddie and the U.S. isn't the big baddie. You know who the big baddie is? The rogue terrorist state with the nuclear weapons. Now, I saw reports, and I haven't confirmed them yet, and I don't want to speak out of turn. I think I saw this from NBC right during the commercial break. But it said that Iran is willing to actually give up its nuclear program. Don't get too excited yet. They've made these promises before. But if that's actually true, you could have peace breaking out across the entire Middle East. Donald Trump should have gotten the Nobel Peace Prize the first time for the Abraham Accords. Him, Jared Kushner, Bibi Netanyahu, the leaders of Bahrain and Morocco and the Emirates, they all should have. You want a perfect example why? Right now in Dubai, there are more kosher restaurants after just a few years of the Abraham Accords than there are in Seattle, Washington. One of them is even named Bibi. Yeah, named Bibi. You know that guy who's the prime minister of Israel? In Dubai, you can go to a kosher restaurant named Bibi. And we looked at their menus this morning, and they look way better than the kosher restaurants here in Seattle. So what I'm saying is that peace is possible through prosperity, through business. We can actually get there. It's the velvet glove versus the iron fist. Of course, it's trust but verify. You want to make peace with Iran? Well, they've lied on everything so far. Can we trust them? You want to make peace with Lebanon? They're run by Hezbollah. Can you trust them? Do you want to make peace with Saudi Arabia? Seems like they're open to it. Looks like we're on the right path there. You want to make peace with Syria? A guy who's a former terrorist leader. Might be able to be done. But you have to verify all this because Qatar is one of the people who's funding Hamas and funding a lot of other terrorist organizations. We're going to trust them. We're going to trust them until we can't. You trust, but verify. That's what you need to do. And we might actually have peace breaking out across the Middle East, which I don't think we've ever really had peace in the Middle East in the entire history of humanity. And could it be thanks to capitalism? Oh, that'll really send the left over the edge. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from our friend Transit Joe. Transit Joe, what's up, man?
A lot of things closer to home, but first, I do want to say very clearly that if President Trump does pull off peace in the Middle East, he should certainly get a pardon for his 34 felonies and 2 impeachments. And I'd be honored to co-sign that. Let's start there.
Okay. All right. We'll take it. We'll take it. We know which party you like, so we'll take it. I appreciate the way in which that was intended, Joe. I do get it.
Thank you, because I think the president does deserve, a break if he is really truly bringing peace around the world. Because I saw what peace is, and peace was the leadership of the great Jewish president of Redmond, her royal awesomeness, Vanessa Kritzer, brought everybody together: Jews, Muslims, Hindus. Everybody was celebrating not just sexy new light rail, but also just being together. And that's what we want as human beings. And sadly, very sadly, closely to home, did I say I'm sad yet? We have a domestic extremist who is anti-Semitic, and only I am on the trail of him. And obviously I'm talking about Alex Zimmerman. And is this task force, this so-called task force on domestic extremism, address the anti-Semitism at the UW, address the anti-Semitism of Alex Zimmerman, address the other forms of anti-Semitism in Washington State? No, they don't. And even when it was brought, I watched the GVW clip today, and I'm like, what are they there for? We just had 2 anti-Semitism physical attacks on a UW building, and yet they're not having a special meeting about it.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. You would think they would have said. You would think they would have said, we had this happen this week. We have a lot of items on our agenda, but we start with we're the extremism task force. Maybe we should discuss the extremism that just happened at University of Washington. And they didn't even touch it, Joe. They pivoted away from it as fast as they possibly could when it was barely mentioned. You heard the lead-in from that Israeli who was asking the question. It was, we're having problems on college campuses. College campuses made it generic, didn't even make it about UW. And they pivoted away from it. It's crazy.
Yes, it is. It is absolutely. It is like bye-bye Netanyahu asking, where the hell are you after October 7th? And, we've all seen what great Jewish leadership can do. We see it in Redmond. We see it in Israel. We see people we see a war last, peace first, business first strategy. And, we reduce crime, we reduce security spending and we're able to invest in building back better. And which is what I thought Democrats were all about. I mean, didn't we just have 4 years of the Biden presidency of build back better? And what are Democrats doing right now?
Yeah, Democrats are asleep. In fact, they're actually asleep. Yeah. We'll talk about that later in the show. But, Joe, I appreciate your passion. I appreciate where you're coming from, and I know you're always coming from a place of good. So I appreciate the call, my man. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, more of your calls, more of your texts, and more true crime coming out of right here at home in Seattle, Washington. We'll give you all that when we come back. But first, Todd Herman's Daily Thoughtcast right now on the Ari Hoffman Show. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, if you want to see this beautiful face but receding hairline, you can check out our streaming over at Rumble, Facebook, over at X, and of course over on YouTube. Yet other ways to watch the Ari Hoffman Show. You can also get the podcast. Download the KVI app, my friends. We want you listening every single minute of every single day, as much as you possibly can. There's an interesting article from Cairo 7. Cairo 7 is usually the outlet I check last. Could officers be returning to Seattle public schools 5 years after the district ended its program that allowed law enforcement in the schools? Seattle Police Chief Sean Barnes told Cairo 7 in a sit-down interview with Deputy Mayor Tiffany Washington that it's a priority for the city. He says, when I talk to people, they want us to return to the schools in some capacity inside the school. Garfield High School has been at the center of discussions when it comes to returning an officer to Seattle schools. Cairo 7 reporter Lindsay Sheldon said, are you saying that SPD is looking to get a school engagement officer inside Garfield next school year? He replied, I think not only SPD, but many people in the community, many people who are parents, teachers, and students would like to see some meaningful engagement of our police officers inside the school. He said, depending on data, multiple schools could each have a school resource officer, a school engagement officer. Each officer would be out of uniform, but still armed. They said, do you have enough officers for that, given your staffing shortages? He says, I always believe that resources are spent where your heart and your energy is. These are the right answers, by the way, but there's a real culture change you have to have. And the culture change is you have to really convince the kids that they're not there to watch them, they're there to protect them. That's a huge, huge change for us. Growing up with security guards around all the time, and I've talked many, many times about how the security guards in my schools and my synagogues and everything are our buddies. That's the way it is. In fact, if people are ditching out on synagogue, you know where you can always find them? Either having a scotch or talking to the security guard outside. You can always find them there because that's how we were all raised. And we're just talking about politics or talking about sports or talking about the weather. It's just another guy. It's just a friend of ours. We know he's got his back, and he knows we have his. This is something that happens all the time. That's the culture that has to change. And I'll actually say taking the guy out of uniform does not make things better. Then they go, oh, he's the narc. No, be proud of who you are. Be out there and have the discussions with the kids. Sure, are you going to have to graduate a bunch of kids? Are you going to have to change the culture yourself? Absolutely. But you know what? They become your friends. Why are they talking about Garfield specifically? Because the Seattle Times reported that nearly 1 year after 17-year-old Amar Murphy Payne was shot outside Garfield High School, his family has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the district, alleging systemic security failures and negligence led to his killing. I don't want to victim blame here. I really, really don't. But I kind of wonder which side these parents were on before any of this stuff happened. I mean, it's tragic losing a child. I really don't want to victim blame here. But I'm really, really curious how many of their friends were protesting to get the cops out of the school. Garfield is a hotbed of radical activism. Garfield High School, it's a real shame, by the way. Garfield High School is the first one to go march for Gaza or whatever it is, or march for BLM or anything else. They have some really radical teachers over there that put the other ones to shame. Murphy Brown, a varsity football player who was just days from graduating, was shot multiple times on June 6, 2024, while trying to break up a fight during lunchtime outside the school. Despite a year-long investigation, no arrests have been made in connection with his death. The lawsuit filed Monday in King County Superior Court by his father and a state representative, along with Amar's mother, stepmother, and brother, argued that the school district failed in its legal obligation to protect students. The family claims that Amar's death was a foreseeable consequence of relaxed security measures, citing the school's open campus policy and a history of gun violence in the surrounding Central District neighborhood. According to Seattle police, Amar was attempting to intervene in a fight between a current and former student when an unidentified individual accompanying the former student pulled a gun and fatally shot him. Surveillance video captured the incident. The shooter remains unidentified. How is the shooter unidentified a year later? Amar's father spoke out after the shooting, said, I want justice. That is all I got to say. Get the justice for everybody that failed my son when I took my son to school and he got killed at lunch. The family's complaint, which was obtained by the Seattle Times, outlines a troubling pattern of violence and insufficient responses by Seattle Public Schools. The same day Amar was killed, 2 other security incidents occurred at Garfield. In one, a student entered a classroom wearing a ski mask, fired an airsoft gun at a teacher, causing a facial and upper body injuries. In another, a student fled school grounds after refusing to let staff check his backpack for a suspected weapon. That student was later placed on a safety plan requiring daily backpack checks. I can't believe they let that kid back in the building. This is all the same day a kid got shot. What else happens on that school at a daily basis? The lawsuit claims that the school failed to follow its own security protocols in these instances, including notifying the district safety and security department and contacting 911 as required by policy. It alleges these failures directly contributed to the fatal shooting later that day. Between 2020 and Amar's death, Seattle police responded to 9 reports involving dangerous weapons near Garfield High School. The complaint argues that Seattle public schools consistently disregard safety threats, enabling armed individuals to access school grounds. In the wake of Amar's killing and other violent incidents in Seattle schools, public scrutiny has intensified around Seattle Public Schools' 2020 decision to remove school resource officers from campuses following the George Floyd riots. Many now question whether that move has left students vulnerable to rising school-based violence. In recent years, a 17-year-old girl was shot at a Garfield bus stop just a few months before this incident. In 2023, a student was shot inside Ingram High School. In 2021, students at Ingram were threatened with an AR-15. During the pandemic, a violent homeless encampment was set up at the campus of Broadview Thompson K-8, and the district failed to act even when students returned to the building. Despite this, the Seattle Public Schools has resisted reintroducing armed law enforcement. Finally, at the start of the 2024-2025 school year, in response to increasing violence, the district hired 16 security guards and 15 safety and security specialists for campuses with high violence rates. These staff are trained in de-escalation, not armed, and will monitor high-risk times like lunch and class transitions. Seems like it ain't working that well if people still want the cops back on campus. This was a failed policy that they did anyway, knowing what was going to happen. Mike, how many times have we covered? All those cases that were listed were all ones we covered on the show. In fact, we broke the stories on a lot of them. In fact, we were the ones covering the Broadview Thompson K-8 stuff before anybody else was. We broke the story about the AR-15 on campus because the school didn't do anything about it. I think that one was at Ingram too, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. These are the stories that nobody is covering because what was the media doing? The media was still on the side of BLM. The media was still on the side of police bad, with the exception of Como News. Como News has always been good about that. Fox 13 is usually good about that. But most of the media was just in lockstep with this kind of stuff. Now, the tide is finally turning, where they say too much violence is the pendulum swinging back the other way. It seems like these schools are really just breeding grounds for violence. It seems like that's all they are. What are these kids actually learning? They're not learning. They're being indoctrinated. We discussed how, okay, well, you can send my kid to school. They might be indoctrinated. Maybe I can fix that hole, but now at home, but now they're not even safe. Not even safe. Of course they want the cops back on campus. I'm surprised it took 5 years. You guys should have asked for this a long time ago, and God knows how many of these incidents could have been avoided. Maybe this boy would still be alive. Lots more to discuss as the show continues. Apparently, the best place to get a good day's sleep is actually at a congressional hearing for Democrats. We'll tell you all about it when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.